This morning, our preaching, I was really ready to do Luke chapter 6, beginning the first 11 verses. But you can see in your bulletins, it says Bible verses various. What's various? It means we're not going to be preaching from the passage in Luke, but looking at different passages, talking about this day, the Sabbath, the Lord's Day. We're going to talk about that this morning. Now, when we get to Luke 6, I'll just read 5 verses. On one Sabbath, while Jesus was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked and ate some of the grain, rubbing them in their hands. But some of the Pharisees, the religious leaders, said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And Jesus answered them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God, took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priest to eat, and also gave it to those who were with him. And he said to them, the Son of Man is the Lord of Sabbath." And then he goes on to heal a man on the Sabbath in the synagogue, and this gets him into all kinds of trouble. And that's really all about a legalistic perspective of the Sabbath. And we're going to, and Lord's Day, we're going to be looking at that next week. But as I was going through that this week, Jesus was talking about how the religious leaders destroyed the intent of the Sabbath through burdensome, legalistic requirements and restrictions they had no business placing on this day. They turned what should have been a delight into actual dread and fear for the people and bondage and works. That's not what the Sabbath is about or Sunday is all about. The question came to me as I was preparing this. What about us? What about us? What about this day for us, the Lord's Day, the Christian Sabbath? Have we swung too far in the other direction? Maybe, just maybe. Have we reduced Sundays to a 2 to 4 hour break from the world, and then it's back to business as usual? Listen, have we minimized, have we trivialized this beautiful, beautiful day that the Lord has given to us? So my focus is going to be on this morning. Now listen to me. Please hear me. This is not to chide you. I'm not going to take this one time. The church is not taught on this consistently throughout. You're living in a pressure cooker in the world that we're in, the culture that we're around. And for most of you, you're just raised in this whole milieu, this whole way. If you're a little bit older, we did have blue laws where things were closed on Sundays even. But for so many, this might seem, I don't know, almost foreign in different ways. So it's not here. I'm not here to guilt you this morning. So please take that. Some of you may feel guilty. That's between you and the Lord. I'm not here to make you squirm, and I'm not here, certainly not to make you angry and try to pound this on you. Some of you might get angry. I don't know. I don't want you to be defensive either about this. But what I want to do, and my goal for this message, is for you to seriously, biblically, prayerfully consider this day. Consider it biblically and what the Lord requires of us. That's what I want you to wrestle with. That's what I'm wrestling with too. So we're kind of in this together. I'm not just preaching at you. I guess I'm preaching with you. I'm going to put it that way, and to you. So as we think about this day, let's define some terms, because you're going to hear me go back and forth between Sabbath and Lord's Day. I do prefer calling it Lord's Day, and we'll get to that, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But let's define and distinguish between Sabbath and the Lord's Day. So in the Old Testament, of course, the idea of Sabbath, that one day of rest, is rooted in creation itself. And that's so important for us. It goes all the way back. That's the pattern that God gave us. That's the flow and the rhythm. 6 days you work, 1 day you rest. The Lord himself did that and shows us. So let's go back to Genesis, all the way back to the beginning. Genesis chapter 1. And I want to read this for you. Genesis 1. And beginning in verse 31. And I'll read through the third verse of the second chapter. God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. It was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day, made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. So there it is. It's for his glory. It's for our good. Many, many benefits. Hopefully, a few of those will come out in this message today. But this is the pattern. This is the rhythm. This is the week for his glory and for our good. So let's jump ahead to Exodus. If you want to turn to Exodus chapter 20, into the commandments. Exodus chapter 20, beginning in verse 8. I'll let you get there. And this is just a message. This is a sermon, kind of introductory. I can't go into depth. This is more a little bit of a teaching time for sure. But this is just the beginning. This is just to get us to think maybe a little bit differently about this day and how we observe it, okay? So Exodus chapter 20, beginning in verse 8. And the Lord says this, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." Right back. It goes right back to Genesis. 6 days you shall labor, do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who's within your gates. And then again, right back to Genesis. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea and all that's in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. So it's enshrined in the moral law of God, in the commandments of God. And so that was a huge part of the life of the nation. As the nation was established, the Sabbath played a real vital role in the nation's relation to the Lord. And it was different from other nations. They were a witness to other nations as well. This was honoring to God. And every time Israel went off track, when they started taking their eyes off the Lord and worshiping idols, going that way, often, almost without fail, the Sabbath was one of those areas that was neglected, that was put off to the side, that was violated, that people didn't keep, they didn't take it seriously at all, or they just went through the motions in that way. So in Isaiah, I'm going to ask you to turn one more time with me to Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah 58. And in the context, Isaiah is warning the people about this just coming in going through the motions kind of way. Their heart's not in it. The false fasting, the not really observing the Lord's day or the Sabbath the way that God had intended them to do. And they were off worshiping other idols. This is just before they're going to be exiled and so on and so forth. They were in disobedience to the Lord. Again, the Sabbath's always part of that. You're in disobedience, and that's just a sure sign and symptom that God's people aren't taking this day very seriously at all. So he says this, because they had failed to keep the Sabbath properly, they were to at least refrain from three things. So Isaiah 58 in verse 13, he says, if you turn back your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, and the holy day of the Lord honorable, if you honor it, not going your own ways, or seeking your own pleasure, or talking idly, then you shall take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride on the heights of the earth. I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. So you see that beautiful promise? He's saying, get back to it, okay? He's saying, what he's saying, don't do this anymore. Keep it. And there's three things they were to refrain from doing. And number one was from doing what they wanted to do in spite of God's command. Here's what you do. Here's how to keep it holy. This is what's expected of you from me. And so that's what you ought to be doing, and they weren't doing that. So stop doing what they wanted to do in spite of God's command. Number two, indulging in worldly pursuits, from going their own ways. I'm just going to do what I want to do. This is my day. God's not going to tell me what to do. I don't have to set anything aside or just a little bit of time. But this is my day. And then thirdly, from idle talk. Now, it's not, when he said that idle talk, the idea there is just like casual talk, just like everyday talk. Just small talk, things that we would just say to one another. Nothing real serious, nothing profound, nothing deep, just idle chatter, right? And it's, kind of those kinds of, don't do that on the Lord's Day. This is the Lord's Day. Our focus should be on Him. We should be talking about deeper things. So these are the things that He said, come back to doing that. Come back to doing that, especially on this day. And then Leviticus 23, you don't have to turn. Leviticus 23, verse 3. Moses is communicating God's will to the people, and he says this. 6 days your work should be done. There's the work week. But on the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest. And that defines the Sabbath a little bit more than just resting. So it's not just, oh man, I get to sleep in on Sunday. I don't have to work. I just get to rest and sleep. No, it's not that kind of rest necessarily. It is physical. Great benefits to that, absolutely. But more than that, he says a solemn rest. It's a holy rest. A rest from work in order to worship. And then he goes on and says, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. So now do you see why we meet on Sundays or on the Sabbath? You come together. It's a day of solemn rest. Rest from work in order to worship, a holy convocation, which in Hebrew is a sacred assembly. It's a time of spiritual renewal, refreshment. It's a day dedicated to God. And for the Jews back then and even today, it was from sundown Friday till sundown Saturday. And that's also from Leviticus 23:32, when he says this, it shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict yourselves. On the 9th day of the month, beginning in the evening, from evening to evening, shall you keep your Sabbath. So that's why, even to this day, Jews, that's Friday night into Saturday, keeping it that way. Now, through the centuries, this was on, even Jesus' day. Let's move up to the time of Christ. The temple, the synagogues. The point is, the entire day was set apart unto the Lord. The entire day was set apart for worship and rest. So that's one. That's the Old Testament Sabbath. Let's talk about Christian Sabbath. We're going to move ahead with the Christians. Christian Sabbath, especially with the Reformed, the Puritans held to this view. They'll say this is the Sabbath. This Sunday is the Christian Sabbath day. The standards, the principle of the Sabbath remains. It's still morally binding. You're still not working at your regular job. You're still keeping that rest, not participating necessarily in the things of this world. But that day is to be sanctified, set apart unto the Lord for worship, rest, and fellowship among the saints. The entire day. This was binding and enduring. So the fourth commandment is still binding and enduring. And you could break that commandment in certain ways if you're not doing what the Lord prescribes. So shorter catechism. This is really instructive. I have 3 questions, but it's really helpful to get this view of Christian Sabbath. It says this. The first question is, what's required in the fourth commandment? The answer is, the fourth commandment requires the keeping holy to God such set times as he has appointed in his word, expressly one whole day in 7 to be a holy Sabbath to himself. And then the next question, which day of the 7th day hath the Lord appointed to be the weekly Sabbath? And so we get the answer. From the beginning of the world to the resurrection of Christ, so going all the way back to Genesis, God appointed the 7th day of the week to be the weekly Sabbath, and the first day of the week ever since to continue to the end of the world, which is the Christian Sabbath. So there's that name, Christian Sabbath. That's how we're supposed to keep it. And then question 60 says, how is the Sabbath to be sanctified? How are we basically try to keep it? The Sabbath is to be sanctified by a holy resting all that day. Notice all that day. Even from such worldly employments, that's your regular job, and recreations, as are lawful the other days of the week. So it's cool to play whatever you're doing during the week. That's all right, so long as you're not breaking the civil law, obviously. That are lawful on other days, and spending the whole time in the public and private exercise of God's worship, except so much as is to be taken up in works of necessity and mercy. So there's works of mercy and necessity. So if you're a police officer, you got to go to work. If you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, those things, even drugstores, there's necessities. Things must be open for the good of the people. And that's true enough in that way, and then doing works of mercy. So that day change, obviously, with Christians, we change the day. Why do we come on Sunday? Acts 20, verse 7 says this, on the first day of the week, that is Sunday, when we're gathered together to break the bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight. So the idea is they met on the first day of the week. There's that change over. The Christians started meeting and commemorating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 6:16. Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches in Galatia, so you also are to do. On the first day of every week, each one of you is to put something aside and store it up, as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. So it's still a mixed time, a time of transition. So on Saturdays, they would often go to the synagogues, but Sundays, the Christians met as well. And that became the norm for the Christians moving forward. So that is the idea of a Christian Sabbath. Now, how does that look for us? And this is what I want us to wrestle with and think about as Christians. It's not a new paradigm. It's just thinking how it has been for us, for Christians. But we're like in such a different place right now. It's just how it is. And again, a lot of it's the pressure of society, culture, lack of teaching from the church, and just moving forward. So, for instance, if you were holding to the Christian Sabbath, as we saw and we read, that day is set apart. So you're not going to do your job. You're not going to work the work that you do during the week. That day you're off. But then other things as well. And what I'm going to mention, I'm just going to use an illustration like going shopping. I'll just use that. But you can extrapolate that to all other categories and areas of things that you would do during the week that, come Sunday, you're going to have to think about. So, Christian Sabbath, would say that you should probably avoid shopping if at all possible. And there's a scale in there. Some people would say, you can't go shopping at all. Right? There's no shopping. You're not going to do that. You're putting other people to work. It's not good for them. It's not good for you. So do everything you need to do by Saturday and let Sunday just be the Lord's day. There's something cool about that. But most who hold the Christian Sabbath aren't going to be like, you could become very legalistic with this. So you need to be careful because you can start imposing things. If I buy a pizza, I'm not going to eat it because you bought that pizza and somebody had to make it work on Sunday. No. If you're in a pinch and you need to go to the store, the Christian Sabbath person can say that's fine. You pick up a few things, but you shouldn't plan on a full shopping day on Sunday. You shouldn't have your whole list to go out on Sunday because it does detract. It does take away from the day. So there's layers. Some are a little strict than others. And the idea behind it is it does prevent commercialization. You know what? We're as Christians, we're holding to this day. It helps foster spiritual focus. I don't have to worry about doing my shopping. I could spend more time doing this, what we're doing right now. And so we're going there. We're keeping within that. So that is Christian Sabbath. Does that make sense to you a little bit? It does. And there's really good things about it. It could be other things you need to be careful about, okay? The second view is the Lord's Day. And from now on in this message, I'm going to refer to this day as the Lord's Day. And that comes from Revelation 1:10. John writes, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like that of a trumpet. So that's where it comes from. The first day of the week is the Lord's Day. And this view is held by people such as John Calvin, Francis Turretin, John Piper more recently, and John MacArthur. So if you're a Lord's Day person, you're not going to refer to Sunday as Sabbath. It's not the Christian Sabbath. It is strictly the Lord's Day. And the idea is that in the fourth commandment, when we read the fourth commandment, it's a mixed commandment. This is what they would say. It has eternal moral principles to be sure, but it also contains ceremonial aspects and regulations that we need that Christ fulfilled that in the ceremonial law, and we could push those aside in that way. So John Calvin in the Geneva Catechism says this, the Lord's Day is to give a picture of spiritual rest, a day to come together and worship on Sunday, to provide rest for those who are under authority, for slaves and for workers, and to have that day set apart for the Lord. But they don't have, there's not as many restrictions as a Christian Sabbatarian would have in that way, a Christian Sabbath. So let's go back to our shopping illustration, right? So again, there's varying degrees within the Lord's Day view too. So it's not just simple, it's not all uniform. But, of course, a Lord's Day is not going to encourage you to worship or to go shopping, or at least to do a big shopping. They're going to say, look, try to set that day aside, but we're not going to necessarily see it as a violation of the commandment. If you got to go, you got to go. You're busy all day, all week you're working, and sometimes you just have to go shopping. We don't recommend it. We'd like to see you home, being there, but that should be the exception and not the rule. Like occasionally you might have to go and do the big thing, but try to make it as least possible. Try to keep this day as much as you can. I'm generalizing. Some are a little more strict, some are less strict on this. Do you understand, though? Do you get it? And it's good stuff because they're designed to do what the Lord wants us to do. Like, have that Lord's Day. Let's set it so we got 6 days to do everything else. Let's keep this day unto the Lord. And so this is what you want to wrestle with and think about. Are you mad at me now? Somebody mad? No, don't get it. You upset yet? Don't worry, there's more coming. But listen, again, I'm going to keep stressing the ethos that we're under a lot of pressure in the society, and there's like we talk about work, or even some families with sport. You invest in your sports and you do all that stuff, and I totally understand the pressure. But I want you to wrestle with this. I'm not saying I'm great with that, but okay, do you understand? Now, the fourth view is Sunday service. And this is the prevailing view. This is the view. This is evangelical churches just about everywhere. So you're listening to Pastor Joe, some of you are saying, this guy's strict. What's he even talking about? Churches I've been to, we go to church, we do our thing, and then the rest of the day's our own, man. You're not going to tell me I can do whatever I want. And the basic requirement for most churches, evangelical churches, now I'm talking liberal churches, just solid evangelical churches, the basic requirement is attending the service. Celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Following the service, your time is your own. That is freedom. That is the freedom we have. And we're not bound by the command. If you need to go shopping, go shopping. That's your day. We understand how busy you are during the week. So take that list. You got to go to Giant Eagle, cool. Next, go to Barnes & Noble, all right. Then you go to the mall. Then you go home. Sometimes you just have to do that. You got to work. That's your schedule to work. That's the way it goes. We totally understand. You need to leave the service early. That's okay. We know you got things going on with your family. Kids have sports. Kids have this. You have that. All those things are going on. So, recreation. Well, that's when the games are scheduled. What are you going to do? Right? And this is the prevailing view. Not all churches are that casual, but most are. And so if you're here, you understand that. You got to do it. We'd like, Sunday's the Lord's Day for sure, but we totally understand. So those are the four of you: the Old Testament, Christian Sabbath, Lord's Day, and just Sunday service. I personally just go back and forth between 2 and 3. I just do. You hear good arguments for Christian Sabbath. Wow, that is so good. But then, I don't know. And then the Lord's Day, man, that's amazing. But I don't know. So it's a thing to wrestle with. So I'm struggling too with that for sure, in that way. I do go back and forth. But here's what I want to talk about this morning, just as I have been biblically and historically a case. I'm just going to call it the Lord's Day from here on. Why you should consider more seriously how you think about and how you approach Sundays. All of us should start. So number one, I've already talked about that. It goes back to creation. There is one day, one full day, not a partial day, one full day. 6 days to labor, 1 day to rest. Number two, it's incorporated in the moral law. We talked about that. It is incorporated in the 10 Commandments. It's hard for me to get past the fact to say, yes, all the other commandments apply. That's the moral law. Can't commit adultery, can't steal, can't lie, should honor God. But just this one, that's the exception to the rule. And that's kind of where I go back and forth with that one. Do you know what I mean? Do you understand that? So that's a deal there as well. But it is incorporated in the moral law. Okay. And then, number three, the testimony of church history of Christians. Listen, people, Christians met on the first day of the week, and they met all day. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, when you read church history, that's what they did. The whole day was set apart for the Christians. They didn't even think about other things, like just doing what they do the other days of the week in terms of their work, in terms of their job, whatever it was. They met during that week. So Justin Martyr, who lived from 100 to 165 A.D., describes a Christian's meeting, what they would do. It sounds a lot like our services. They would set the day apart, come and meet, and go through, have an order of worship, celebrate the Lord's table. But you could read some of these accounts of what they did on the Lord's Day. And check this out. They would meet early in the morning for prayer, the congregation. Early in the morning for prayer. Then they would have a service after prayer. Then they would have a meal after the service and celebrate communion at that meal. And then after that, they would have rest or continued fellowship time or doing works of mercy and service in that way. That's what they did during that day. Then they would come back and have a psalm sing or a hymn sing, and they would close the day by having a service together as a congregation. Can you imagine doing that together? Can you imagine us being together like that? I don't know. Was that Let's meet here at 8 o'clock for prayer. Let's have Sunday school class at 9. Let's have our service at 10. After our service, let's have a meal together and do communion together. And then after that, from like 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you could rest, or you could go visit, or you could stay fellowshipping. And then at 6 o'clock, you come back and we sing together. And then at 7 o'clock, we have a service to close out the day. I mean, it sounds really good, doesn't it? But really, would we do it? Amen. But I don't know. But that was the norm, basically, for the church. That was the day was set apart. And that's my contention here, what I want us to think about in that way, that day was set apart. Now, in 321 AD, Emperor Constantine, it's because of Constantine. It wasn't because of Constantine. The Christians were practicing this all along. They were setting aside the Lord's Day to have this day of worship. Constantine, after he was converted, supposedly, that always goes back and forth. Was he truly converted? Anyway, in 321, Constantine did formalize what the Christians were already doing, and he gave an empire-wide edict on Sunday. That was the Lord's Day. So no civil magistrates, no shops were open, no businesses were to be open. Facilities were closed to facilitate rest or worship and rest for the Christians. So that was empire-wide. So even if you weren't a Christian, you were still under that, which is God's common grace. I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So listen to me, guys. Basically, from that time, from 321 AD until very recently, this was the practice on Sundays for Christians. From 321 till very recently. Now there were times, and you can go back and read, well, what about this? And they didn't always keep the Sabbath in that way. They did that. Those are the exceptions. But from 321, even the Puritans, when they came to this land, of course the Puritans, when they came to this land, this was the practice by and large, and other Christians. In 1610 were called the Blue Laws were published in Virginia. And those are the blue laws that regulated commerce, restricted commercial activities, retail, entertainment, and the sale of alcohol. There's still some places that don't sell alcohol. That's all changed. I mean, it's going down. But those were ordinances and statutes that were put out. So from 321, and I'm telling you this, and you can check me on this, till about the 1970s, this was the day. That it wasn't even a question. The day was set aside for Christians. And society benefited from because they rest. There's no rest today, is there? Everybody's tired. Everybody's busy. Nothing stops. It's one day into the next. What day is it? Everything's the same. The Sabbath, even for the non-believers, gave that break so you could catch your breath. Those things are closed and we could just relax. I don't have to worry. It's not like that. Up until the 1970s, when there was sweeping laws or sweeping repeals of these laws and statutes and ordinances. And remember, if you're old enough, you can remember, it started slow, didn't it? It started slow. Oh, Giant Eagle's open 9 till 2. That's it, just 9 till 2. We know you have worship. We know, it's Sunday, so we're not going to do too much, just a little bit. Sunday is nearly the busiest retail shopping day of the week now. Saturday's still number one, but Sunday's a close second. Do you see that? This is Satan. It's almost like the Garden of Eden, isn't it? You could eat from every tree of the garden except that one. The Lord says, you have 6 days. You have 6 days to do what you will, to do your work, to do the recreation, to have the leisure. 1 day is required to be fully devoted to Him. Now, initially, that was okay for the most part. Not so much anymore. We give 2 to 4 hours dedicated to church. And even then, for so many, our attention is divided because, well, after this, I got something going on. I got this going on. So we're filled with that. Satan is a great deceiver, beloved. He's a great deceiver. He's a manipulator. He's a counterfeit. He's crafty, and he'll do anything to divert, distract, divide your affections from your God. And one of those is the Sabbath day. Oh, I said Sabbath, Lord's Day, either one. It's the Lord's Day. Regarding this day, 2 ways real quick. Number 1, the removal of the distinction of the day. I just touched on this a second ago. This is worship and rest. Goes all the way back to creation. 6 days, 1 day we rest. Sunday is just another day. When I was young, we still had the blue laws in effect. And no stores were open, or very few. Some were. Chookies on the corner down East, that was still open. We'd always walk to that store. Drugstore would be open, that kind of thing. But the stores, the malls, they were closed. You didn't have shops that were open. You didn't have organized sports that were going on. Everything was there. And I remember being so bored as a kid. You can't do anything, man. Can't go to the mall, can't go to, can't play baseball. But you know what? As I look back, that was God's common grace, because what it did do is it meant that my dad would be home on Sundays, because he worked 6 days a week, and he would work 7 if he could. It meant that my uncles and my aunts, even who worked at the mall, would be home on that day, on that Sunday. Everything was closed, so they were home. And that meant that we could all get together as a family, 20 of us, 25, 30 of us, and share a meal together. Now, we weren't raised particularly religiously, but it was still that, wasn't it? You had that time, because there was nothing else to do, so you were together. But that was a beautiful thing, because you were with your family. And you had that time, and everything slowed down. And you didn't have to worry about doing this or going there, because you couldn't, even if you wanted to. So you might not go to the mall, but you can go to the park. Some of my fondest memories, my uncle packing in his car, going to Shenley Park on a Sunday afternoon, driving around. It's amazing, looking back. But that was God's grace in that day. Every day now is the same, as I just said, isn't it? There's no rest. You have your individual day off. There's days off for individuals, but not corporately. Not corporately. Everything's open all the time. It doesn't matter. Everything's so, it doesn't matter what day of week it is. So nothing is closed corporately where everybody just has to rest, take a break. For many Christians, Sunday's the busiest day of the week. You're tired, you're worn out. Sunday's nothing distinct beyond the 2 to 4 hours spent at church, which for some is more of a burden than a delight, because, you know what? When's this guy going to stop preaching? Because I got to go. I got something going on. I can't stay that long. We have this. We have that. And again, I'm not blaming you. This is truly, truly, truly not trying to guilt. We know the pressure, but I want you to think about this, because this is more of bondage than you know, than you think. No rest. More of a burden. So Satan has taken away that distinction. This was a distinct day. This was God's day. People knew when you rested, God made the world in 6 days. On that 7th day, he rested. Not anymore. God, every day is the same. Number 2, and this might sound kind of funny to some of you, but I think this day has been, and I want you to stick with me on this one, this day has been overshadowed and undermined simply by entertainment. I'm just going to say it straight up. I don't believe it's a coincidence that Sunday is the day where everything culminates, all the events, and this competes with the Lord's Day, and in many ways overshadows it. In many ways, we look forward to football games more than we do to coming to church. Some of us are honest in that way. And I know that they'll say, oh, it's because the audience is available on Sunday. Listen, it's not a coincidence that these things take place on Sunday. God's day. The Lord's day, the day that's set apart, the day that Christians are supposed to forget about the world. Let's focus on Christ. We have 6 days to do everything else. Let's focus on the Lord Jesus Christ. Let's focus on our fellowship on that day. But no. When's the Super Bowl played, kids? Kids, when's the Super Bowl? Sunday, biggest day of the year. That takes. Oh man, people don't come to church because they're getting ready for that game on Sunday, Super Bowl. What about golf? Amen. Wait a minute. Was that a misplaced amen? What about golf? I know we love golf, and you can play golf all, you got 6 days to play. But the Masters, I know what you mean. The PGA Championship, the FedEx Championship, when's the trophy given out? When's it culminate? When's the final round? Today, I'm glad he's almost, because I got to go home and watch the end of that. Just think about it. The biggest events compete with the Lord's day. It does. They just do. They divert our attention. But it's just the way that it is. And we see it's okay. Tennis, French Open, Wimbledon. Remember, breakfast at Wimbledon. Me and my friends, we were in high school. Sunday mornings, we would get ready, set everything up, and watch the men's finals on Sunday. On Sunday, compete the Lord's day. This is day to set apart from your labors, your rest, recreations, and yet everybody wants to watch this. It does diminish. It does diminish, whether you want to believe that or not. It simply does. Racing, if you're a racing fan, Daytona 500, Indy 500, when do they race? Sunday. World Cup soccer, July 19th, Sunday is the final. Where's your attention? Do you understand? Do you see that? It's not just a coincidence. It's not just because the audience is there. This is undermining. It takes us away. It just does. And so many of us. Okay, you're not a sports fan? You like entertainment? The Oscars, Sunday night. The Emmys, Sunday night. The Grammys, Sunday night. Community events, the Great Race, Sunday, of course, got to. Organized rec leagues, the championship games, tournaments, Sundays. What gets pushed out? Let's just be honest. What gets pushed out? This results in incompleteness. There's an incompleteness to the Lord's day. We're not fulfilled. Our affections are divided. We're preoccupied. We're rushed. These kinds of things rob you from the freedom, the fellowship, the joy, the refreshment that the Lord's day was meant for. That's what it was meant for. And you're kind of in bondage. We're kind of in bondage to these things. Oh, it's this event's going on, or this happening here. What that does, it puts you in a place where coming here to fellowship is harder to do. That's kind of, it's not freedom. I have all these worries. Here's what I got to get done on that day that should be set apart unto the Lord. You can't fully engage. You can't cultivate deeper fellowship. You can't just enjoy Him more. When you have so much to do, you can't just go, we're just going to take the afternoon and take a nice little Sunday drive. Now, some Christian Sabbatarians might have a problem with you with that. That's a joke, I think. But you know what I mean? You can go and enjoy the creation and have that picnic and just enjoy the Lord on that day. This is not a message about do's and don'ts. It's not what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do. It is about the heart. It is about the Spirit. It is about devotion to the Lord and to His day. It's about priorities. It's about taking stock and counting the cost of following Christ. It just is. Because it is a sacrifice. You're going to have to give things up. If we're going to seek to honor Him, there's sacrifice involved. But there's so much more to be gained. One of the greatest examples I have is my father-in-law, who's here today. So you could verify this with him if you want. But many years ago now, he's such a strong witness. He's in retail. And he was working. He came under the conviction. Are you Sabbatarian? The Sabbath. But he came under the conviction that he wasn't going to do his work on Sunday that he does during the rest of the week. And he would say, I'll work anytime you want. I'll work the graveyard Saturday night shift, when nobody's shopping. But please, let me have Sundays off. And for a while they did. But a new Pharaoh came that didn't know the name, didn't know Joseph. A new manager came and said, we'll schedule you on Sunday. Well, that started this process. But my father-in-law held to his convictions. It cost him his job. And that was many years ago. He stuck to his conviction about this very day. And people said, you're silly. You're the breadwinner. What are you going to do? How are you going to make it? What are you going to go on? You ask him. You ask him. And I asked him the other day, do you have any regrets? Before that sentence was finished almost, he said, no, the Lord has blessed us and kept us and sustained us. It's a witness. Okay, what are the benefits of honoring the day? And we'll close with this. Number one, it's freedom. This is freedom, man. Not like, oh, we're free to do what we want. Come to church for 2 to 4 hours, and then we're free to do what we want. That's bondage in many ways. This is freedom. When you have the Lord's Day, when you are settled and say, this is the day that we've set apart to the Lord, that's freedom to worship without distraction. You don't have to worry, well, we got to go. We need to do this. It's going to be so busy later on today. No, when that day is set apart, there's nothing else to do, right? So you worship the Lord. It's time for deeper fellowship. That's one of the things. We're so busy. Gotta go. We can hang out. We can have lunch together. We don't have to do the, meet at 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night, but we can spend a little time together. It gives you time to minister. Do you know that? These are the blessings of the Lord's Day. You have time to minister. I know that you guys want to go visit Rick. I know that you want to see George. And you want to see others that are not doing well. Sunday is a beautiful day for that. We used to go to the nursing home in Topeka occasionally and preach to them. Works of mercy. That's beautiful. That gives you time to do that. It gives you time to show hospitality. I'm just too busy. We can't even have people over. Every day of the week is busy, and even on Sundays we're doing so much. It's just a more relaxed, restful day at home. You could just go home with your family and do devotions, hang out, talk about the sermon, talk about the service, whatever you do in that way. Like I said earlier, enjoy creation. Go out, have a picnic with your family. But you don't have that burden of the world. That's part of what the Sabbath was meant for, that those burdens of the world are released for that day, for that time. There are many other ways that you could do this that are truly good for us and glorifying to Him. But it is a cost to it, isn't there? And we're so not used to thinking this way. I'm not trying to tell you anything new. This isn't a novel teaching. It's getting back to what was. We've changed. So I feel very convicted and challenged in certain ways. But I want you to take this to heart. I want you to truly think about this. I want you to wrestle with it. Not to say, okay, Pastor Joe preached that message, whatever, and I'm going to go off. And I want you to think about it. Because I do believe it could be truly transformative. Not just for you and your family, but for all of us. Will it cost you? Absolutely. Most likely. Me, not so much, because I'm a pastor. This is what I do. This is our day, so I don't have to, you know what I mean? I don't have to break anything. We already kind of keep it. But it's a hard issue. In regards to your relationship with Christ, it will be transformative. In your relationship with Christ, as you're drawing closer to Him, your focus is on Him. With Christians, we can hang out, we can be together, we can fellowship, we can minister together. And with the world itself. The world sees us, and we're just like it. But when somebody says no, like my father says, no, I will not, that speaks to Christ. That's a witness. Now, however people take it, they take it, but it's a witness. It's faithfulness to the Lord. See? I want us to be challenged. I don't want you to feel guilty. I don't want you to feel squirming at all. All of us, we're wrestling with this. It's not about that. It's really, really thinking about it. Do you think the Lord is pleased? And again, that's such like a guilt thing to say. You think God's pleased with you? Yeah. But really, truly, when we see the evidence from Scripture, one day, all day, devoted to me, visiting, love, worship, rest that way. Go home and take it, restful rest in that way. One day, I'll give you 2 to 4 hours. 2 to 4 hours. Is that please, Alan? We need to consider these things. As your pastor, I'd love to see more of a Lord's Day application of Sunday, that we would do that. And that's something you need to really, please wrestle with, pray with. And I know it's just like a one-time sermon, because next we're going to talk about all legalism. And that's easy for us because hopefully we're not legalists like the Pharisees. But this is hard for us because here's where we are. Are we not dishonoring the Lord in a different way than the Pharisees did? They thought too much of it. Do we think too little of it?